Call is now being recorded. So now we're recording and we'll start. So a very good evening to everyone present here, and thank you for joining in today for our 42nd IDC Alumni Talk. Thank you, Aditi, for taking the time to talk to us all. I have the pleasure of introducing you to the audience here. You graduated from IDC in 2007 in Visual Communication stream. Soon after, you went to Italy for a degree in book arts. In 2013, you started Communication Design and Book Art Studio in Udaipur. Personally, I would say I've always been intrigued by this, whole term called book art, and like everyone else here, we look forward to your talk. And with that, over to you, Aditi.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you everyone for joining and taking our time today. Special thanks to Nimish and Ravi for organizing it. They've really helped me walk through this beautifully. To bring in context to my practice properly, I'd like to first just give you my complete educational background. So my undergraduation is in applied arts, although most of my time went in fine art studios because a lot of my friends were in fine arts. So the subjects that I was able to explore were painting, printmaking, sculpting, campaign design, photography, illustration, so on and so forth. I then went on to IDC, as Nimish mentioned, to pursue my post-graduation in visual communication. Again, I was very lucky to kind of go to the school where everything was an open studio, and I was able to explore a lot more than what the subject itself offered. So not just like the assignments, but also the conversations with my batchmates, my seniors, my juniors, the professors, people on campus, that really opened my mind and heart to a lot of ideas. What I also pursued at IDC was subjects like book design, identity design, game design, interaction design, animation, and theater. Two particular modules created a great impact in my understanding and practice. One was game design and one was Indian thoughts and traditions. During one of the semesters, we also were given the subject of a module of book design, and during which my batch was binding books. And that sort of stayed very strongly with me, and I wanted to understand it. And since I had sort of explored so much before, I would take on a subject and I would think that, I'm really interested in the subject, but I would drop it in a couple of months, understand it, and then drop it. So I sort of made a book for 1 year, if not more. And then I realized that I am really passionate about the subject and I wanted to then further pursue it professionally. So I went to Florence and I went to this very traditional school. So it was again very interesting because, we were exploring like making our own cameras, to exploring materials, skills, processes, traditional process of, printmaking, binding, also cooking and, wine making. So that again was like a great sort of like understanding of the subject and overall how life affects design and the process. I got back to Udaipur. I started freelancing in 2011. Then I established my studio, registered my studio in 2013. We work in two verticals, communication design and book arts. Today, I'll be talking a lot more about book arts and how communication design has slowly sort of aligned with this practice as well. The first project that I want to talk about is on Mewar. I got an opportunity to work with the City Palace of Udaipur. And this was like in 2013, and it was like almost a 2-month-long project where I was given the opportunity to not only design like for the event, communication for the event itself, but also be part of this wonderful workshop that they hosted during this festival called Holika Dahan, where they would invite the master makers of Mewar, and they would also bring in like somebody from the outside to intervene as a designer in the processes to understand, observe, listen, understand, and then sort of bring in their own ideas so that the crafts move forward and we are creating products and services for the contemporary market. We were 11 makers in total. 10 of us were from Mewar, and Peter is an artist based in the UK. He's a sculptor. He was visiting that time. So I included him in the workshop. The process was very engaging for me because I got an opportunity to rediscover my own city and my own roots. I visited the studios of all the master makers, had these lovely conversations about their practice, their skill, their stories. Why do they pursue this craft still, after so many generations? What are their reasons? It was also very interesting to see their interpersonal relationships because they have known each other for a very long time, because it is a small community after all. So the crafts that we were sort of taking, understanding were Rajasthan folk art, puppet making, fur painting, terracotta, miniature painting, stone carving, tikri art, and like I said, puppet making. So during these interactions, the first part of the process was, like I said, observation, listening, and understanding their journeys, their craft, their skill. But the second half was about ideating, coming together as a community of makers and having a dialogue of what if we bring together our own crafts and our own understanding, and what can we create really through that. So I was able to talk about the entire process of the clientele and what the clientele asks for. How do you solve a problem? Because a lot of times in the traditional art and craft practice, you don't begin with usually solving a problem. In crafts you do, but in art, a lot of times you're not trying to solve a problem, you're trying to express. So how do you like bring in the idea of art, craft, and design together and marry it to create beautiful products? The City Palace hosts it beautifully. What they also do is, after this process is over, they actually do a proper inauguration of the event called Holika Dahan. It's a 3-day festival. It used to be. Now I don't think they continue anymore. But they would invite local citizens of the city and also tourists who are visiting to for the display. And they would, like, everything that has been created during those 2 months is actually on display, and for people to buy, have a conversation, or give commission to the artists and makers. It also, by the end of the 3-day festival, Shiji, His Highness himself, facilitated all the artists and makers, which was a very important part of the entire process, because the master makers of Mewar definitely enjoy that acknowledgement and also want that support from the City Palace to sort of move ahead in their journeys. The experiments and explorations we did during that process were very interesting for me and very rewarding. So the first piece this is how we began. We wanted to create the Saraswati to begin our product making journey. And like I mentioned, Peter was from UK, and Jamna Lalji was a master maker of terracotta. And other master makers, they knew English but not very well versed with it. So it was very interesting to see their conversations and their dialogue happening through the processes rather than words. So just looking at each other's practice, they would like sort of imitate and learn from each other and transfer skills. So the Saraswati phase that you see is actually a very signature style of Peter's work in his sculptures. So not like a lot of expression driven, but like a very flat circle on a circle. So that Jamnalji caught through the process, not through conversations, which was very interesting. Another product that we were able to come out with was a dinner set. Now, what was very engaging in this process was we were taking two crafts in one art form, given the same brief that, you have to create a terracotta lotus, terracotta dinner set inspired by lotus. So the brief remains same, but we manifested it in two processes. One was miniature painting and one was tikri art, which is the glass art in Mewar. So what although the brief is the same, but the manifestations were so different. So it was very interesting to not only see how the artists and makers were approaching the process, but also conversing during the making of the dinner sets. This is another result of the workshop, which is combining the traditional art of book binding with fur painting. So fur traditionally is a long fabric which is hand painted, and it was traditionally taken from village to village with storytellers, and their assistant would light up a portion which is painted, and the storytellers would narrate the stories. So it was very interesting, a tradition that was continued for many, many generations. Although now it seems that it's slowly fading away and it's done only in few pockets. So we wanted to bring in the element of fur to like literally everybody's pocket, to be able to create these visual narratives which are very accessible. So we created these modern accordion folded furs. So the structure of the accordion book gives you an opportunity to make it a circular storytelling. So where you can have visuals on both sides of the book. So you can actually go through the entire book and somebody can narrate the story, or you can reach out to the artist. Continuing this, like it was a very, very inspiring a project for me, because I think then from in my practice, I wanted to continue engaging with the local arts and crafts of Mewar. So I'd like to now showcase one product that we create at the studio, which engages 5 crafts within one. The first craft is book binding, that of course we practice at the studio. The second is cotton fabric. So
Yeah.
So the third craft that we include in this is handmade paper. The handmade papers that you see here are actually papers created by recycled cotton. The cotton waste that you find in textile industries is recycled into these papers. The other 2 crafts that we include are hand block printing and indigo dyeing. So there's a village approximately 40 kilometers from Udaipur called Akola, where they have traditionally practiced these 2 craft forms. And what you see on the left is like a traditional lehenga worn by like a lady from that village. It's the process called fetia. It's a hot process of block printing. The result that we achieve from combining these 5 practices together, 5 crafts together, is a very simple sketchbook. What you see here is inspired by Mewar, Udaipur especially, where you see Udaipur is called the White City as well. So it's like sandwich between the sky and the water. It's a city of lakes. And the motif that you see here is like that of triangle that represents the Aravalli mountain ranges. The binding that I've chosen here is sort of like brings together the idea that, multiple crafts coming together in one book and how each one affects the other. These are more experiments and different bindings that we practice at the studio. So from Japanese stab binding to hinge binding, pamphlet, stitch, long stitch, etc. So there are 3 genres that we work with within the vertical of book arts. The first you've seen, which is pure binding, book binding. The second is called the artist book. The idea of an artist book is you look at a book as an object of art. So it is created in a limited edition. It is always hand done, handcrafted, hand painted, and what you see in this picture is a project in collaboration with Suzanne and Anne, 2 artists. So one lives in the US and one lives in Denmark. The 3 of us came together and worked on this poem written by Rabindranath Tagore, Unending Love. And this was a deep learning, vertical learning for me in terms of understanding the material paper and the skill of paper making. So each paper that you can see individually, it has been actually hand lifted on a decal, and what you see, the pattern that you see on the paper has been created in the pulp itself. It is not a graphic added on top of the paper. Everything is just created within the paper. So this was sort of the final look of the entire book. The project was called Khela, which means play in Bengali. And we wanted to also explore the Kama Sutra series through this poem. What the colors that you see, right, on the images are all paper pulp and not added colors onto the paper. So this was like a very interesting and very like extremely deep learning process for me to understand how you can just create magic with paper itself. What this project I'd like to talk about, where I was able to align my two practices of communication design and book arts. This is an invitation design created for Mrinal, who's a Kathak dancer. And this is particularly created for that event where she was performing that evening. So the illustrations that you see and the text that you see explains her performance that particular evening. It was a very, very interesting project. For the first time, I was able to align the two verticals, and we were screen printing at the studio. It was made in an edition of 100. Usually, if you create an artist book, it's a very limited edition up to like say 20, 25, sometimes even 5 editions of a book. But this was like an extended edition. So this relationship sort of continued and this friendship grew for me. And during the pandemic, we wanted to create something and support the art community in some way. We got together on multiple calls and, then decided to take the Kathak book concept forward, but this time make it like a larger edition and make it more accessible to people. So this is the first time the studio engaged in working with 10,000 custom handmade papers, circular papers, and the design was so specific, and screen printing, you need to be very careful with your alignments. So it was a tedious task, extremely challenging a project, especially because of the pandemic as well, because there were lack of resources. The team wasn't coming all the time. So just to manage everything and to learn that, although it may look very simple because it's a single color printing process, but it was one of the most challenging projects to take on. We also created these decal edges on the paper, which is like, which is when you lift the paper directly from decal and not cut it with machine. So that brought in its own challenges. The final result was a coffee table book, artist book, which took almost over a year for us to finally complete and finally get it together properly. We are just speaking about the mudras and what the details of the mudras are. We wanted to take this structure because we wanted to sort of bring in the element of circle of life and how like night and day, and how the moon cycle as well. Moving forward, the third genre that we practice at the studio is called altered books, where we actually kind of deconstruct the book in a way. We look at the book in a completely new form and try and re-engage with the material in a different process altogether. So this particular piece is a commission that I received for Mr. Bachchan's 70th birthday. And the only brief I was given was he reads portions of Gita and Ramayana in the morning. So what I wanted to do was bring in Mangilalji, who's a very celebrated master artist of folk Rajasthan folk art. And he usually does painting and creates cover. So I wanted to bring in the element of doors and cover into this piece. So he painted, we discussed multiple times, and we kind of created a dialogue with what portions of Ramayana do we want on the sculpture. The piece that you see in the center is called Circle of Life. It is actually a Gita that I was able to procure from a temple written in Sanskrit script. And each page in this sculpture is like each day of your life. So the essence of Gita is, at least what I understood was, you keep doing the actions that you're doing. And, at the end of the day, your experiences, your knowledge, your interactions, your memories will create this magnificent piece and very unique that is true only to you. It was quite in resonance with Mr. Bachchan's journey in his life. The next part that I really want to talk about is like the support system, the team, and the challenges that we have at the studio. So my parents are here. My brother doesn't like to be photographed, so he's not in the picture. But because of my family, I've been able to actually experiment a lot and explore a lot without worrying about the basic sort of day-to-day troubles one could have when they start their professional journey. And they've been like really the strong pillars who've like helped us grow, helped us understand and understand each other as a team and understand how to take this craft forward. Otherwise, we were very lost without them. Who you see on the right hand side are my team. Like it's one person's missing from this photograph, but we are a team of 10 people now, and I also definitely want to acknowledge all the family and extended family and friends who've supported me all these years in multiple ways. So I'm very grateful to them. The challenges now with the team that I face, there are in three parts. The first one is skill and process training. I think what happens is in the beginning of the journey, I was actually bringing in a lot of people who were already familiar with this field, either paper folding, paper craft, or book binding. But I realized soon enough that they were not. They got accustomed to a certain way of practicing the craft, and they were okay to practice the mediocre quality of craft, and were not ready to innovate, were not ready to listen to the feedback that we were getting from clients and change. So I had to let that go, but it took a much longer time for me to go through that journey. And then when I got new people in, I wanted to take in people who had no craft background at all. But what happened during that process is I was getting, and I wanted to really support women artisans. So I brought in women and who had studied till 8th standard, 10th standard. So while they say that they had studied it till 8th and 10th, but unfortunately, their understanding of what a student should know by 8th standard or 10th standard was rather bleak. So I had to start with like completely basic education of teaching them mathematics and science so that they understand the process first. So from understanding looking at the scale to actually be able to solve problems, like if I give them a sheet of paper and say I need 10 pieces from this sheet without wasting a single side of it. So what is the size of the piece that you need to take out so that we have no wastage. So now they have reached that level, so I'm quite happy with that. Teaching in local dialect, yeah, I think this was one of the biggest challenges, because initially I speak Hindi, and I write in Hindi, but while I was speaking in Hindi, I was using a lot of English words, which I did not realize that I was doing it. So this is where I think my parents were great in making me understand that there is a set hierarchy that these guys follow, where they will not question me back. So although they were like certain days they were saying that they've understood, but they were not understanding what I was saying. And in my mind, I'd already taught them. So I wasn't understanding why I'm they able to translate the teaching into practice. Slowly, I understood that, these gaps need to be filled. And I immediately started asking the word that I was saying in English or Hindi for them to translate it in local dialect. And through that process, I have also grown and learned. And I think now we have better communication as a team. Knowledge retention, again, I think because they joined the practice as their bread and butter and living, so they weren't as interested as I was hope they would be when they joined the practice. So although they knew the process by say heart, they could repeat what steps we follow, and they could repeat the craft as it is, but they were not questioning and they were not engaging with it more than that. So one solution I came up with was for them to teach other people, go back and teach their families or teach each other. And through that process, their engagement increased fourfolds. The other challenge that I have is people management, of course, because I think, again, like I said, India has such a strong hierarchy and caste system that sometimes interpersonal relationships can be very tricky. And for me also, the way I wanted to approach my studio was like a flat structure where everybody treats everybody equally. But over the years, I've realized that, it's a different kind of unlearning someone has to go through to kind of entertain that idea, or like to actually practice that. Of course, managing holidays, I think I had more women workers initially when I started working. And I realized that anything that happens at the household, be it like a celebration or a medical difficulty that they're facing, the woman has to like leave their work and first engage with that part. And so they would like suddenly leave and like not come for like days or months sometimes. And I didn't know if I could actually rely on them, take on projects, commission projects. How do we sustain this practice? The last has been the financial management and challenges, because it's an ongoing, I think, challenge, because this is such a unique practice in a way. And when I came back to Udaipur, or India rather, not very many studios were practicing, rather nobody was practicing. So I had nobody to engage in conversations with, like, how do I take this studio forward? How do I take this practice forward? So in the way that is engaging and is giving solutions to people, and we get commissions for that. So it has been an uphill journey, honestly, where to explain what the practice is all about and how can we create solutions for the clients. But definitely like a very rewarding journey, I must say. At this point, I would like to say that, one of the strong reasons we've been able to practice and sustain for so many years has been that I still practice communication design. Like, that's a strong vertical at the studio. Two projects that I want to talk about in this vertical is one, the organization that I work with is called Dakshinam Sarees. It's a textile company based in Chennai. They have 4 stores pan India. And it has been a very, very rewarding project for me, because I got to engage indirectly with 28 craft textile clusters that I could have never imagined I would work with, I'll get to work with or understand their practices, because I'm not from a textile background at all. So with this project, not only did I design the identity of the brand, but slowly, I started designing like the collaterals, such as like, the stationery, the invoices, the ads, then slowly complete brand communication. So creating a language of color, typography, to actually very interestingly also being part of the interior design completely. So from understanding how we can, take the motives and make them bigger, larger than life, and, let people engage with traditions in a more contemporary way, to actually talking about the display, the color of the furniture, to the furnishings. The most recent work that we're doing with Dakshinam, which is very exciting for me, is the newsletter that we're creating, where we are creating illustrations, we're engaging with the clients directly and trying to understand what do they engage with, what political, social, political, cultural engagements do they enjoy, topics do they enjoy. And not only creating these illustrations, but also creating animations and creating these, like a moving graphic novel, if I may say so. The next project that I'll talk about is the City Palace. So again, the book that I designed with the City Palace, it was a very, very interesting project, because the palace used to create these calendars every year since 1987. These beautiful hand-painted, handwritten calendars that will talk about one aspect of Mewar, and like sort of like every year a different aspect of Mewar would come out really in those calendars. So they wanted to compile all of those calendars and make it into a book. So once I received the content, it was very exciting to read and to go through the entire book, and it was all in Hindi. So I requested the palace if they would consider translating that into English as well, because the stories were very, very engaging. The anecdotes, the nuances of Mewar. It took almost over 2 years, because I think, it wasn't a rush project from the palace or from our studio. So we took like our time to understand, engage with the content, to get the right person on board, to be able to translate the text properly, get the facts right. And finally, we created this book, which has been a very, very exciting project for the studio, really. Now I just want to talk about where the studio is headed. The future is where I want to align all my practices. So I spoke about the 2 professional verticals, which is communication design and book arts, but I also practice art and I've exhibited in multiple spaces. And I also practice teaching. So I've been teaching for over like now for a decade, actually, for 12 years, and in different design schools. And I wanted to align all those verticals of communication design, um, fine art, book craft, and education. So this is a game that we are designing, and it has miniature painting, and I've painted after many, many years. So I'm very excited about this project. It took me 6 months to finally complete this painting, and we've converted it into this structure which opens up like a game. And whoever's engaging with this game would learn the fundamentals of visual design. If you want to know more about this project, you could reach out to me directly. You could also look at the website, which is just very basic right now. I want to end this presentation with this slide. I'm ever so grateful for the teachers, my mentors, advisors, the support system, because if it wasn't for them, one, I wouldn't know where I would be. And secondly, I think they've not only just taught me during my educational years, but they've continued to support me through my journey. Whenever I felt low, whenever I felt lost, I've reached out to them and they've responded immediately, and I cannot be more grateful for that. Nimish, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. So we have the floor open now for questions. And while we are waiting for the questions, I see a great comment that has come in, and this comment is from Fatima Barot. She says, "It's been an absolute pleasure to see your work. Always admired your passion, but hearing of your journey, resilience, and impact on ground, my respect towards your work just rose many folds. Thank you for sharing and inspiring, Aditi. Keep telling your story and stay awesome."
Oh, Fatima has been such a strong pillar for me. She's my batchmate from IDC and a lovely, lovely friend and a lovely, lovely mentor, in fact, to me. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a first question. Shivangi, go ahead.
I think Shivangi, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think I by mistake pressed the button, but it was a great presentation. I really loved it.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed the works. Beautiful works, Aditi.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivangi.
So Professor Achitra was appreciative of your work, very refreshing. And okay, where's that work gone? Very refreshing, very important work done, great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sankalp has a question.
Sankalp, go ahead.
Thank you, Nimish, for giving me the opportunity of attending this wonderful talk. And thank you, Aditi, for sharing your journey and your work. The last bit, just the slide before this one, the one which is being shared right now, can you just give a few instances of how exactly does learning happen and which particular age group is it most appropriate for?
Right. So I think this is where once somebody explores, opens up the book itself. So one is engagement with the miniature art itself, to understanding, decoding the painting. So that's one part of the game. The second part is you would create your own play. So there's a color understanding, there's a shape understanding, and there's a form understanding. Then there's an emotional context understanding that we are bringing in with different dices that we are creating for the game. So your game would change each time you choose a new dice. Here. And at the end, so also this becomes a coloring book. So not all parts of the painting when you open up are completely filled. Only one is filled for your reference, but the rest of the parts you can actually create, you can actually paint and engage with the artwork itself as well. And the age group, I think, so I wanted to sort of work with pre-teen, like in my experience of teaching with children, I've realized that at the age of 11 to 13, kids become kids are quite sure of, in terms of design and art, understanding what they want to create, what they want to engage with. So their understanding of, creating an artwork is fine, but they don't understand how to put it in context or how to apply that knowledge. So the one way to kind of engage them in this game is to actually be able to apply their learnings during the process and after the process. But so I did a little bit of user study with like many different age groups, and I realized that anybody who's beginning their journey with visual design want like a step-by-step learning to how something this complex is created with like very simple, basic fundamentals of shape and color.
So I think
Thank you, Aditi.
Just as a follow-up on Sankalp's question, so what is that miniature painting that you have made? You said you took a long time to make the painting. What is the painting? Because I can't see that here.
Yeah, I think I should have maybe put
So
up like another picture where you can see some
what
detail.
is it inspired by? Is it inspired by Mewari painting or what's it?
So yeah, it's inspired by the concept of miniatures, which is multiple perspectives coming in together in one space, and also like my love for monkeys, and I think just curiosity, right? Like this was the first game that is coming out of the studio. I wanted to make sure that people who are engaging with it are people who are curious by nature. So monkey sort of just is like a direct correlation to that.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we have again some great comments from Suresh C. Likes your work, Bhavan Burgess likes your work, and then Punya Education and Research. So I don't know who the name is, but he has raised his.
I'm Raghuram here, IDC 8385, Product Design.
Hey, Raghuram.
Aditi, it was a great presentation. I really liked it. I'm here at Punjab for 3 days and I work for lovely professional university. I have about 400 different verticals of design students. I just wanted to check, is it possible one day if I just send you an invite that you can come for a guest lecture, Aditi?
Of course, yes. It'll be lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll keep in touch and I'll catch up with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we have more admiration for your work from Spriha Chokhani and Zalkarna and Najar.
Maybe I can, Nimish, if you could take some screenshots. I think I can't read the comments right now.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that will get recorded and you'll get
okay, thank you.
So there is a question from Mandar Kale. Have you ever faced a need to force a newness or freshness into tradition?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, the question is, have you ever faced the need to force a newness or freshness into tradition?
I think not really. I really enjoy the traditional practices as they are. I think I just look at them differently because my context is different and I think my engagement with people is different. So I think what eventually happens is, where if I'm engaging with a traditional craft artist, maker, then the dialogue only begins with the fact that, who are we possibly creating for? And so it automatically sort of aligns which direction do we want to take in terms of color and composition, but not so much deviating from the traditional practice of their craft. Really. Does that answer the question?
Mandar, I hope it answers the question. Yes, it does. Thank you. So, Spriha Chokhani, she asks the question, how do you see craft, design, art, and technology coming together?
Yeah, amazing question. So we're also now creating, so very exciting, like I didn't mention it during the presentation, but I come from this family who's like a family of, science folks. So my dad's an engineer, my brother's an engineer, my mom's a mathematician. And right now she's learned coding. So we are actually very excited to create this game into an online version as well, like learning coding through this game as well. So where I see art, craft, design, and technology aligning is in the most purest fundamental sense, in a way that, if you get all the principles correctly, I think then it's left up to the imagination of the creator to take it forward. But it is a very easy access and is a very easy alignment according to me. Maybe I think again, IDC, because it was based in IIT Bombay, I think that also opened up my mind and heart to working with technology parallelly, always engaging. I think what we create in design is always created while using a machine, right? Like an Apple or like different softwares. So technology has definitely been a very important part of design. Craft also now people sometimes I think overlook, but a lot of artisans have been able to talk about their work and engage with different audiences all over the world through technology, right? Like simple apps like WhatsApp have made their communication so easy and accessible. Instagram, a great platform to sort of showcase your work. So I think they're already working together. It's just that like maybe we're not sometimes looking at it as aligned with each other. I know. Did that answer your question, Spriya?
Yeah, I guess it did. Maybe I thought you would say, maybe we don't need technology. We already have a good amount of craft design in that, and that's enough. But yes, so there's another question. So there's a question from Zulkarnain Nazar. And the question is, I want to know about the business aspect of the kind of work that you do.
Very good question. So I think it has been like learning on the go. Like I said during the presentation that there was nobody that I could look up to or like go and ask for advice. So it was like it was carving my own sort of path, and there've been a lot of like a lot of a lot of failures, honestly, and a lot of challenges to kind of sustain this practice. And like I said, communication design has balanced this, but now we've reached a point where the team is sort of trained enough and the team is engaged enough with the process where we can take commission projects. So now what we're looking at is designing our own products, which we would market through our own website. I've done these process of going to different exhibitions, multiple exhibitions, but I realized during those exhibitions that, there's impulse buy. But to sustain a practice, you need like some sort of retainership or organizations that truly believe in this practice and are able to sort of align what they want to create with this practice. So that's very rare to find, and it's an ongoing challenge. But that's why I mentioned like my family and friends, because honestly, I think a lot of the projects and a lot of like this practice has continued because we've got support from them. So they would like sort of I'll showcase this one book, okay, which is very interesting. This is done for a family friend. This is done for a swimmer. She's the youngest swimmer in the world to have crossed the English Channel in 2019. And this was like they wanted to create a brochure for her, right? Like talking about all her accomplishments and all the journey that she's taken so far. But when we started talking about this project, I engaged them with the other side of the practice, right? Which is like communication, not just communication design, but book arts. So they were so excited to kind of like, combine the two practices in terms of like we creating handcrafted books. So this is done in Japanese tab binding. I'm not sure if this is visible properly. And the book had these like, these plain pages also coming in between where it just talks about water and how her entire journey, her achievements, all that. So it's been like, it's been an experiment, I would say, really. Like I have no one answer to give to that question.
So maybe we can, ask a different question. Are you making money?
We are I mean, with communication design projects, yes.
Okay.
This is, I wouldn't say with this, we are floating, we are like just surviving, I think, with this side of the vertical.
Okay. That's good.
Just a related question, Nimish, because we are on the same topic. I mean, is it that the way the craft-led business has a limitation on the number of output? For example, there is a boundary on how much you can produce. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage to your business?
No, I mean, luckily, because I'm based out of Udaipur, like Rajasthan has one of the biggest artisan communities there is in the country. And scale is actually, once one visits and lives in Jaipur, you understand that scale in craft is not even a question that one can ask. I mean, if you can really reach any scale. But the bigger problem here is the understanding of what are the possibilities with this kind of craft. So what people are used to are seeing the notebooks which are bound with leather covers in a particular way, and that they understand immediately. They are able to translate what they can do with that book format, and so that's easier process for conversation, for selling, for marketplace, everything. But if you bring in one new idea, but in my case, what the mistake that I also did was I would bring in multiple new ideas to exhibitions. So not only was the viewer completely surprised by the subject itself, but it was also like so many ideas that they could not comprehend. How do they go about it? How do they engage? So this has been like my learning curve as well in terms of marketing, understanding what should I be presenting, so on and so forth. The scale is not a problem.
Okay. So we have a question from Amardeep Singh. When can we get to play the game you have designed?
Soon, I think. I think July we should be like we are ready for pre-orders in July. So it'll be really amazing that if the community could support us, really. Because these are again handcrafted, all of them are handcrafted. So yeah, my team is small. So yeah, we have the scalability sort of issues for now.
Okay. So there's a question from Vandana. She says, how willing are the craftsmen to extend to modern exploration? How do you get them around to execute?
Yeah, so that's I was talking about the challenges with people management that I faced. One of the challenges was when I was working with the artisans who had already been in this industry. It was very difficult for me to teach them to start from scratch, right? But when you engage people from the beginning in such a way, one, it's a clean slate. They've never been in the craft industry at all. So it's a clean slate, and you can like really train their mind as you would want them to sort of respond. So now they're engaged with the idea that every time we are creating something new, and they don't they don't know otherwise, and they sort of enjoy that process now, right? I mean, that's how I at least solved my problem here.
There's a follow-up question from Vandana. Are sponsors a hindrance?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think like it's very challenging. It's like I feel sandwiched between like, you know, the patron or the client to the artisans, to that entire conversation, translation, communication. I think that again has been a very uphill journey for me.
So I guess that's where the conflict between being an artist and being a designer comes into play.
Yeah.
So you can do your own
Extremely.
work, and you can
Yeah.
go hungry, or you can work with pesky clients and get some money.
Right.
So okay,
Yeah,
and
then,
so
I mean, that's
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, so one of the reasons that we're still operating from home, right? Like, I think so here we are still trying to like figure that out.
So there is a question from Suresh. Are the craftsmen willing to share their craft secrets?
If you mean the artisans, then
Yes.
I think, at least in my practice, I want them to be able to talk about their practice outside of work, because I want the craft to survive. We want more communication. But having said that, I think I've also had extremely challenging circumstances where people have come, engaged with my artisans and poached my artisans. So, you give in like 2 years, 3 years into training somebody, and somebody would just come and like, take people. So that has been like learning curve for me, understanding that I can't be, say, an open studio to all. So that's more now on me as opposed to like artisans.
So if we put that question in a slightly different way, like when you're working with these artists who are doing card painting and you were collaborating, so what kind of collaboration was this? Were they very forthcoming in the kind of work they were doing and sharing how they did, like maybe using pigment colors or so are they, is there a good dialogue between you guys when you're working together?
Yeah. So I think like initially I did not understand those conversations where they would always ask me that, where, like what my family background is and where I come from, and, what are my plans with the craft, what are my plans with the design. So I think initially I was very uncomfortable answering all those questions, but slowly I realized those were conversations to make them feel secure. To let them know that I'm not here to take your art away from you or craft away from you. And I want to definitely sort of acknowledge you for the contribution to the project that you have. So I think it has, again, I think it's been a journey, and they've seen me live here for relationship altogether, but it has taken a very long time to and yeah, I mean, I think rightly so. So if I have to answer that question again, I think people are not open now because I think they've also faced a lot of bad situations, so to say.
Okay.
I think trust is important for them. Trust is important for, I think, any human connection. So so once you can establish that trust, I think then they're open and willing to share.
Sure. I was curious, we saw some example of book art in that artifact they did Amitabh Bachchan.
Yeah.
Have you done more such work for yourself or commercially? I mean, what's your experience with that be?
I have done a couple of commissions and I've done a couple of works for myself. But I think what I realized is that you can't just create, say, one piece unless it's a commission. It's fine because they're just commissioning you for one piece. But if you have to think of an exhibition or a space, you have to create multiple pieces. And for that, I've never gotten the opportunity to, or the time and the space to create multiple pieces, to create a show per se, which is one of my dreams. I think like I really want to be able to do that. So individually, yes, but not as a show.
You also mentioned in one of your conversations that you had a gallery space. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So I think over the years I realized that Udaipur being a tourist city, there are a lot of people coming in and engaging with the local makers, right? Like artists and multiple spaces. So I would get these calls from hotels and connoisseurs that, there are people who are interested in looking at your work. And I could never understand initially how and why and how did they even get to know about me. And because I work from home, so there was always this thought that, do I really want strangers coming into the studio? But slowly, I was able to filter down the process to, engage with only a couple of hotels. And so I created this very small space at my house where I wanted to display all of my experiments and books. So it became a very interesting process pre-pandemic where if somebody is visiting Udaipur, they would write to me, or the hotel would connect with me, and we would fix a time, and they would come. I would know a lot about them before they were visiting, so that kind of gave me comfort in hosting them. And I would talk about my journey. I would talk about the craft, and I would talk about and show the products. So that also became an income point for us at the studio, because they got so engaged with the stories and the local craft that they wanted to definitely carry that memory back. So that was functioning quite decently well until the pandemic hit. And since then, I think like we've never opened up the space again.
Mhm.
I think there's a question from
So
Rahul Kadam. Is raised.
sorry, what's up?
Rahul is
No.
raised,
No, I don't see any raised hand.
which was came in and went. So Rahul, are you there? Rahul
Yeah.
Kadam? Okay, correct.
Okay, maybe that was a yeah. So we have maybe another couple of minutes, and in that maybe I can ask if anybody wants to get started into bookmaking, book art,
Yeah,
book folding.
Rahul here. Sorry. I was-
Yeah, Rahul, go ahead.
yeah. Actually, more than a question, I just wanted to congratulate Aditi. I'm an architect practicing from Pune, and it was so intriguing to listen to her because many of the challenges we also face as architects, where the dilemma between the artist and the designer and a leader and an entrepreneur comes in. No? So she's been able to manage nicely and gracefully. I just wanted to congratulate her.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rahul.
Yeah, so maybe one final comment that you might want to make. If somebody wants to get into book folding, book art, what would your advice to that newcomer be?
I think find your passion within it. I think there are multiple verticals within that as well, and practice it enough times to really know that you want to follow this, because it's not an easy craft to practice anywhere in the world. So you have to be really, really like passionate about it, and also find ways to engage with the people. I think you from the beginning just find ways to engage with people outside of your own community to know that if this craft will survive for you or not.
Sure. So we have last two comments from Ashish and Sanjeev. Ashish says, "Hey, Aditi, it's beautiful and inspiring to see where you've come. The last I saw your work was about beautiful binding techniques. Now I'm blown away by what I see. Thank you so much." And Sanjeev says, "Great effort. Thank you for sharing your experience, Aditi." And with that, Aditi, thank you again so much for that wonderful talk that you gave. I'm sure a lot of us would want to go back and start book art and book binding, or maybe would want to come to your studio and intern with you. With that, thank you everyone for joining in for our 40th again, for taking the time to be with us. And to everyone, we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Nimish. Thank you, Ravi.
Let's stop recording.
I'll do that.